how you can take your fluffy blob and turn it into a recognizable face. You guessed it, today is FaceTime. And in this video, we're going to talk about 7 tips to help you make that happen. Feely is super excited to get some new friends, so let's get to it. Here we are felting on a head shape. This should actually take you some time, which brings us to tip number 1. You want to felt on a firm base. How firm you create your base pretty much depends on you, but you definitely need it to be at least a consistency of stale pizza crust. You notice that we already put the chin on. I generally like to start with the chin and the nose as the first parts to my face. Often at this stage, I have not decided what type of face expression or significant features. I'm just trying to rough in a basic shape. Speaking of facial expressions and facial features, this brings us to tip number 2. It's a great idea to study face shapes and facial expressions. Look at tons of pictures and get inspiration. Now, even though I said at this moment I don't really do that, I'm normally just making basic shapes. However, it is perfectly fine for you to have a face shape or expression in mind. In fact, I encourage you to do so if you're just learning. This is my process. I have been doing faces for quite some time, and I like to usually use smiles as my expression, and I already have certain features that are my favorite. But as you are learning and finding your style, I think it's a great idea for you to already have a face shape or expression already in mind. So again, tip number 2 is study those faces. The sun was setting, so I decided to get cozy in my reclining chair and do some felting. Again, just getting in some basic shapes and adding some cheeks. In tip number 1, I mentioned to felt a firm base. Well, for tip number 3, for the facial features that I add, such as cheeks and nose, I don't overfelt, because at this stage, I like for them to be squishy and still pliable and movable. For those just trying faces, to the left was my very first face, and of course to the right, that's Feely. But see the progression? We all start from the beginning. Adding more to the nose. Noses are kind of one of my features that I like to overindulge on. And talking about overindulging, I can't wait to show you one of my tips later on in the video. I really kind of like doing it. You will notice that, like how I mentioned that I like the facial features to be pliable and moldable still, that I take my hands and pull and tug. I constantly do that. Pull and tug and squish and mush. So here we are at tip number 4, shapes. It's important to try to see what shapes you need to create on your face because everything has a shape, whether it's circle, oval, more square, rectangle, triangle. So try to figure out what shapes you need when you're looking at faces. You notice how I am taking very light taps. This brings us to tip number 5. Understand how wool reacts to how you use your techniques. Sometimes you have to use different needles, or sometimes you have to just do light taps or be a little more aggressive. So, to be more clear, tip number 5 is to understand wool and how it reacts when you are felting, understand the techniques, and understand the differences of needles and how to use them. My faces are a continuous work in progress, and I will often just continuously add where I need more at, depending on what I'm going for. Here I am, squishing and squeezing those cheeks. Here are those tap, tap, taps. I'm lightly felting, not sticking the needle as far in. A funny thing happens. You go through these stages where you love the face, you hate the face. Right now I'm in a stage where I love the face. I will go through another stage where I'll hate it again, love it, and possibly hate it again, and then finally love it. It's normal. You basically have to trust the process and just keep on stabbing and see what happens. We are almost to one of my favorite tips and one of my favorite things to do sometimes. So don't fret, this is not me removing the nose we just worked on. This was another face. But I wanted to show you my favorite tip, tip number 6. If it doesn't work, absolutely get rid of it. Wool is so forgiving, so if you don't like it, just rip it off and start over. So this is not another tip of the original 7 tips, but it's something that I like to do. It's something that you don't have to do, but I like to use chalk pastels, or I've even used makeup to kind of contour and outline some of the face features to give them more depth and dimension. And to be honest, for me, it kind of helps me see better. Makes me see those features better. It definitely makes them pop and stand out more. I think this is something that I started like to do when I was a child, putting makeup on all your dolls. At this moment, I'm still in love with the face, but you'll see what I'm talking about in just a moment about hating the face. We still have tip number 7 to go through, but right now, I'm making eyeballs. Here I'm making holes for the eyes that I'm going to put in. I didn't glue them in yet, but at this stage I don't glue them in because I may move them or pop the whole eye out again and redo it. And here is where hating the face happens. As you can see, it's you got to trust the process, and they're going to go through these phases of looking weird, and then you can pull them together again, and then they'll look weird again. It just goes on and on. I'm going to make him some eyelids. That will definitely help. At this stage of the face, I will be working on this face for hours and days on end, either taking away, adding more, and tweaking features and just whatever needs to be done. I have added some dark colored wool to outline the inside of the eye. Once again, it's for more depth and definition. And it truly does take a long process to figure out what exactly it is that you need for a face to look really great. And that brings us to tip number 7. Our final tip, tip number 7, is practice. I know, but truly that's what it takes, is to doing things over and over again and learning and playing. I still have lots to do on this one. She or he is not completed yet. Thank you so much, and hopefully you'll see this one finished in the near future.